Welcome back, everybody, to our fourth episode of Time to Shine. My name's Adrian. I'm also known as Northern Star on Twitter. And fear not, I am not joined alone. I have my faithful friend Mike here with me. Hello, Mike.
I am the faithful sidekick back once again. It's going fantastic. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. And to those who haven't been listening so far, I'm Adrian. I am known as Northern Star on Twitter. Big Shining Time fan, as is Mike. So I think we're a pretty good pair.
I think we make a pretty dynamic duo in this regard.
And so today we're kind of continuing our little overview. We did season 1 episodes in the first, season 2 episodes in the second, and now we're moving on to the third and sadly final season of Shining Time Station.
So sad, but also not as sad because we get some real treats this season.
We do, absolutely. And Mike, I guess I want to ask, like, what do you think of season 3 in general as compared to the other two?
Season 3 for me is the most nostalgic by a long shot, because I was born early 1992, and I think season 3 started airing in late 1992 or 1993.
Yes,
somewhere around there.
When it started airing, 93.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, as I've said before, my first conscious memory of being alive at all was watching Thomas. So, Shining Time season 3. It's funny because when I was rewatching a lot of the series, I was, as I said, I didn't watch season 1 until much later in life. That was exciting.
Yeah.
Season 2, I remembered things here and there, but it was amazing how going back through season 3 and watching it in order, how many things were just coming back to me like, oh, I remember this. And it's like you're discovering it again. But, there's just so many memorable moments in this season. Yeah. And I think you can really tell that this was the one where the writers truly had it down. Like they'd settled in with the current cast they had. They weren't afraid to play around and just have absolute fun. And I think what people will notice a lot with this season is they only use one Thomas story in a lot of the episodes.
Yeah.
And I know for some people, the less Thomas, the worse it is. But from my standpoint, at least, not for us, not from our standpoints, you really notice that as you watch more of the season, you don't really miss that second Thomas story because they're doing so many fun things with the cast and with the plot of the station itself.
Yes.
It's just such a joy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think some episodes with, and we'll, I think, look at this in Mysterious Stranger with 2 Thomas stories can sometimes start to feel a bit overladen, kind of a bit heavy. So that's a really good point. I think the show is a very well-oiled machine by season 3. And like you said, the writers have got things down pat. Season 3 was actually the first season that I remember experiencing new episodes for, because when my grandma started recording season 2 for me, and then I think she just did most of it on one tape, so I kind of watched the whole thing at once. And then I remember her being like, there are new episodes. And so I remember watching those for the first time, and that was exciting, seeing new Thomas stories that I hadn't seen before, because I hadn't seen them on home video yet, released in Shining Time episodes, was really cool. Because as somebody who had just seen the same the same stories for, that's not entirely true. There were some season 3 stories of Thomas in season 2, but to see series 3B episodes in season 3 of Shining Time. And sorry if I'm confusing folks who aren't aware, the third series of Thomas the Tank Engine was shot in 2 parts. They had A and B. And so, some of those later episodes were in season 3. And so that was kind of exciting and novel. And I remember that was some of the more kind of fun, colorful episodes. And interestingly, it was the longest season to shoot. Rick Sigelko said they shot in almost every season of the year in Toronto.
Really?
For that third season. So it was a long shoot. They covered a lot of ground. It has the most episodes out of any season. So they were working really hard at that point.
Now, because you have memories specifically of like when it was brand new to you, do you have any, is there one like standout moment of season 3 that you always go back to that you can remember like vividly seeing for the first time?
That's a good question. I think I probably remember the first episodes that were on the tape, which were, there was Mr. Conductor's 4th of July. So I remember that very well. And I think the story is it Tender Engines?
Escape in 4th of July.
Escape in 4th of July, sorry, yes. And then I think Tender Engines is in a different one. I can't remember which one. But
I think that one's in Mr. Conductor's movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, yes. So usually, like, the first one or two kind of struck me, and it was just nice to see new Shining Time Station. Interestingly, like, reflecting back on it now, I'd probably say season 3 is my least favorite season overall. There are like some standout episodes for me that I really do like. But there was a way that it started to get some of the ideas were a bit too out there for me. And some of the stories felt a little rushed, like the writing. And so I think looking back on it, I miss some of the kind of lulling pace and some of the heart that season 1 and 2 had for me. And I think I'm just more of a slower paced guy anyway. So it's not my standout season, but I of course still enjoy it and love it. And, and there are certain episodes that will hit harder, like the heart of the last episode of the series really kind of touched me.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. I wouldn't say it's my favorite overall season, but when they hit their stride with a lot of the episodes, it's real memorable and it stands out for sure.
Yeah, they're fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun season. And I think Schemer in particular really has some standout episodes.
Oh, yeah,
where
sure.
It really does focus on Brian's comedic ability and genius. And I remember loving that, like in Fortune Teller Schemer, and even in...
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
I know, it's so funny. Schemo.
El Schemo.
I know. And it's funny, one of my friends was watching it for the first time the other day on my recommendation, and he mentioned about Ginny's hair. It's dark purple. And it's looking back, I'm like, oh my god, it's so obviously a wig. But as a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. But lots of ground to cover. But we're going to give you a little taster. And Mike and I have each chosen 2 episodes today. And the first that we're going to start with is the 7th episode of the 3rd series, called Billy's Party.
That is correct. So, we chose this one in a little bit of a cheeky way because recently Canadian Thanksgiving has passed, so I figured it would be an appropriate episode to choose to discuss in our season 3 taster episode here.
Not that many Americans actually know that, but when I tell people, they're like really surprised, and I'm like, yeah, if it's a thing, they're like, oh, it's so early.
Yeah, for those unaware, Canada is a bit unique in that we celebrate Thanksgiving in October as opposed to November. So there you are. So this episode, as Adrian said, is titled Billy's Party. Bit of a rundown of the plot here. Obviously, it is Thanksgiving at Shining Time Station, and the station is very busy. Everyone is rushing about trying to get to their respective destinations. And one of the central points of the episode is that Billy has been invited to a special party with many railroad folk known as the Boomers and the Hobos. Of course, things don't go to plan. Billy is constantly being interrupted with things, whether it's having to fix an engine so they can get extra trains running, getting Ginny over to, was it Dilly-Lick, I believe, Adrian?
I think so.
To get a chicken? Or a turkey, rather. So many birds, you know?
Gobble, gobble.
Gobble, gobble. And then, of course, having to rescue Schemer, who, donned in his pilgrimage fit, is trying to get passengers to give him gifts throughout the whole episode, gets on a train and Billy has to chase him down. The ending of the episode is very wholesome. It ends with Billy alone in the train station thinking that he will be stranded for Thanksgiving, only to be surprised by everyone coming back to the station to celebrate with him in a very special way.
Look, we railroad people have to find our Thanksgiving wherever we can. Do you have room for one more?
Of
course we do. Of course we do.
It's quite a lovely ending. It fills my heart with joy, I will say. And I never grew up with this episode. So I watched it, I think, for the first time a year or two ago. And it was nice to be able to watch it again just to get that. It's so odd, you know, watching a show that you've seen so many times as a kid, but then seeing new episodes of it when you're older, or not new, but new to you.
Yeah.
It is a sweet story.
Yeah, I agree. I also don't really remember this one from when I was a kid, but in rewatching the series, it's one of the episodes that I found myself continually going back to just because it's such a feel-good episode.
It really is. What are some of your... like you said, you don't really remember it, but overall, what are some standout kind of moments in the episode for you, or general impressions?
Oh man, well, I think we have to start off, of course, with the legendary Brian O'Connor. His schemer in this episode. Schemer is basically dressed as a pilgrim, promoting the Thanksgiving of the future, as he puts it, wherein he basically gets gifts from people and responds with, "Why, thanks. Thanks for giving."
In other words, they'll give me something and I will say, why, thanks. Thanks for giving. Pretty great, huh?
I love Schemer's just unfiltered selfishness. There's something about the way, I don't know if you call it the id or whatever you'd call it, that he just sort of, he's just like, what about me? And he really goes there. And he's just a character, I think, that is not, I don't want to say easy to write, but you can put him in any situation and guess like, okay, yeah, Thanksgiving Schemer would want everyone to give him thanks, not the other way around. It's just such a lovely way that you can reverse it, but he's not cruel about it either. Like, he's not too vindictive, and by the end he comes around a bit.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I remember, I think it was when, it may have been an interview in the lead up to series 3, but I think it was Entertainment Tonight was doing something on the set of Shining Time Station.
Yeah.
And they were interviewing a child psychologist, and the psychologist made specific note of Schemer and how they hoped that kids weren't, like, you know, taking after him. And you watch episodes like these and it's like, how could any kid think that Schemer's behavior is anything to model yourself after?
I know.
Like, it's written in such a clear way that, like, even as a kid, I was like, this is just for comedy. Like, no one would ever want to be this guy.
And I will say, like, as a therapist myself, I disagree with that psychologist's comments. I think it was with it was the morning show with Katie Couric, I think.
Yes.
And
That's
Katie's
right.
like, that Schemer's a real dirtbag. I remember she said that. And then the psychologist is like, oh yes, I hope, you know, I don't know if that's okay for kids to, you know, be. And again, I think it kind of annoys me because kids know the difference between right and wrong inherently, and I think they know that Schemer is this silly, goofy character that gets things wrong. You know, Rick pointed that out in an interview. He said he like kids do point that out. They can make that distinction. They don't need some adult, you know, being, I don't know, sanitizing everything. I think it's good that we have somebody who is getting things wrong and being selfish, so that you can just see that lovely contrast between him and Stacy, who's just the feel good, like, share with everyone. And
yeah, Shining Time Station was always really good with, you know, very clearly laying out what is something that you want to aspire to and something you want to shy away from.
Yeah.
I always felt like with the characters, whether they were regulars like Schemer or even guest characters, you always got a pretty clear sense of, you know, what was right and what was wrong. And I don't think any kid out there was confused in thinking that Schemer was the one to maybe not take after, you know?
Well, and they never touted what Schemer did as the right thing. They always loop back in the end, and it showed he's usually, let's face it, responsible for his own demise in most of the situations. And then he's like, and has a bit of a tantrum, and then Stacey's like, well, you know, you got it. And he's like, well, okay. Oh man, good old Schemer.
So I would say that, and also I really love there's so many things I love about this episode, but the moment of Stacy telling the kids the story about how the boomers and the hobos initially came together.
Yeah.
That's really heartwarming. The Thanksgiving song in the picture machine always gets me, and I don't know why.
It's very sweet, and I love
It is.
and I love it because there are a couple of music videos that were shot in that style, sort of in that big kind of farmhouse with property and people walking out in nature. I think I related to it as a kid a lot because I grew up in an environment like that. And so when I see those kinds of and it was, she's trying to find her dog, and then she sneaks the turkey at the end. It's so sweet.
Oh, I think it's the dog. It's the dog that gets me for sure, because I'm a dog lover.
Me too.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, my kitten is sleeping behind me faithfully on the couch. Oh no, she went away, but she was as we record this. But yeah, put in an animal and then like Kevin Roth's beautiful dulcet tones, and you've got me.
Oh, and I just butter at the sound of that. So
Oh
my gosh.
What
about you, Adrian? Do you have standouts from this upon rewatching it?
In general, I was thinking about it today. I think I enjoyed seeing Ginny and Midge have more of a part in the story. I like it when their characters are utilized.
Yes, I agree.
I think they strengthen the episode and they just add another layer of complexity, but not in a way that feels overwhelming. That being said, I do think, like, for me, they rushed the schemer on the train storyline. Like, that was such a blip to me. I was like, what happened? And then all of a sudden it's the end of the episode. So I think that was rushed. Like, they could have done without that or something. But yeah, I enjoy Midge and Ginny, and I also really enjoy the idea of the table at the station for all the dishes, because again, that's just like community feeling, and it, you know, the kids get to be curious and they're like, ew, what's in under here, and then Mr. Conductor's under one of them, which I thought was so sweet, because again, like, there's just endless ways that you can make this small man materialize or come into a scene. And that totally surprised me. I was like, what? And he's just like in a little lawn chair, you know, what looks like suntanning. And it's very charming. And it's a great little segue. So I think they did that well. Any episodes for me that focus on people gathering in the station makes it feel cozy and warm. And so
I agree.
The fact that it ended that way, and then everyone kind of comes in, and then Billy gets his Thanksgiving, in the end. I will say, I don't know this episode, super duper well, but I wonder, what do you think? What do you think of the Thomas story?
No, we're crossing this bridge already.
I'm so sorry, but like, I'm so sorry, but like, it's a really hard one to escape.
It is. Okay, I feel we have to give some background for those who, I'm sure most people know the story at this point, but for those who don't, a little history lesson. The episode featured in this Shining Time Station story is originally, it was called Thomas and Percy's Christmas Adventure. Very typical story. You can see it's clearly in a Christmas setting. Now, when they dubbed the episode for North American audiences, knowing that they were going to have a Thanksgiving episode of Shining Time Station, they altered the script of the episode to instead be about Thanksgiving. Good idea in theory. In practice... Yeah, I mean, look, no one can fault the visuals of season 3 of Thomas. I think it's stunning. Not. This episode in particular, with all the snow and, after the storm and Thomas and Percy trying to go through to the village.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful sets all around.
And the storm is so nice too. I love the sound.
It is. Yeah, I love it. It's oddly, I know it's supposed to be chaotic, but something about that storm scene is actually kind of like beautiful and soothing to me.
Comforting. Yeah. Same.
Yeah. I can't really explain why, but it just is. So
yeah.
I mean, if they had left it as a Christmas episode, as the original was, I think this would have been great. Obviously, it wouldn't have fit with the Shining Time Station episode, and I get why they changed it to suit that. But I feel like, I don't know. I think if you were going to be filming episodes knowing that there was going to be maybe an American component to it, maybe they could have done some alternate shots. That would have been cool.
I agree. Like the shed's not with a Christmas tree.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many kids out there must have watched this episode specifically on Shining Time Station, and then gone to their parents and went, so why don't we have a Thanksgiving tree?
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Why aren't we getting Thanksgiving presents?
No, but I like your point. Why couldn't they have just left it as a Christmas episode? Because I think you could definitely, kind of transplant some of the values from Thanksgiving onto Christmas in terms of, giving to others and things like that. It would have been fine, I think. But I remember watching this episode as a kid I never saw it in Shining Time first. I saw it I think it was Percy's Ghostly Trek. I didn't think a lot of it, because I was like, oh, okay, whatever, Thanksgiving, okay, Mountain Adventure, oh, fun. But rewatching it does confuse me a little bit. But the sentiment is nice still. It's still a sweet story.
Yeah, the sentiment is very nice, and again, it's a fantastic story if it had kind of been left intact. Even with the edits, it's still, the idea of a Thanksgiving episode, especially when you think that, Britt Allcroft's vision of Thomas wasn't specifically an island in the UK. Sodor, in her eyes, was meant to be this sort of universal place that could be anywhere for any kid.
Right.
The idea of Thanksgiving, in that sense, happening on Sodor isn't very far-fetched.
No.
They just needed a little bit extra in terms of the footage, and you notice towards the end of the episode, because of what they've had to cut out, it's actually a shorter runtime than the typical Thomas story.
Yes.
Which usually is 4.5 minutes. I believe this one only clocks in at 4 minutes and 10 seconds or something like that.
Right. Because they have to cut out the Father Christmas bit. Right. And
well, yeah, they cut out the whole, obviously, I mean, they had the foresight to cut out the whole ending bit at the sheds where We Wish You a Merry Christmas is being played.
Yes.
Obviously wouldn't fit the Thanksgiving motif, but because of that, the sound effects are off and the music cues are off. So, you hear Percy's whistle when Toby's the one who's coming on screen. Stuff like that.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, the most jarring parts of the episode for me rewatching it was the letters, the mailing, because I was like, people don't really mail each other Thanksgiving mail.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
super weird. And then the tree at the end, it's just starkly obvious. So I'm surprised that got through. I'm a little sort of who let that go? But
yeah,
still sweet.
Yeah, now I wonder, Adrian, this is sort of an off-the-cuff question, but do you feel like they could have still kept the Shining Time episode intact, but if they had chosen a different Thomas story with the moral of potentially being thankful, would it still have worked? And which story would you maybe have replaced this one with?
Oh, that's a very good question. And well, you could do a fall theme story, couldn't you?
You could.
I mean, we've got the James slipping on the leaves. That's the only fall one I can think of at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have any in particular that you?
For some reason, the one that is coming to me, well, bit of a toss-up, and I know they were played in season 2 already, but I would say either Thomas gets bumped or Trust Thomas, because I feel like Thomas gets bumped would make sense because, you have that whole bit at the very end of the episode where, Thomas and Bertie are talking about how thankful they are to have each other as friends who help each other out when needed.
That's true.
Similar thing to Trust Thomas, it's highlighting how you're, there for someone and trying to help someone, and in the end, they're grateful for what you do. Sticks with the Thanksgiving idea, I suppose, but it's not specifically a Thanksgiving episode.
Yeah, it's true. That definitely could work. It's hard too because, and we'll encounter this in the next episode a bit. There weren't really enough Thomas episodes sometimes, it felt like. And as a kid, I did start to get really tired of repeats by season 3 of Shining Time. And then when I rewatched season 1 again, because I was like, oh my God, I know these stories so well. So yeah. I think, had the shooting of Shining Time coincided more with the 4th series. I mean, I know we got that in the family specials, but had Thomas been shot a bit earlier and we got season 4 a bit earlier, that could have been woven into the show a lot more, instead of all the repeats. But it's just the way it turns out.
Yeah, I agree there. I think because when you think about it, there were only 10 quote unquote new Thomas stories in this season.
Basically,
yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah, it was just the season 3B episodes, and then they kind of recycled. Obviously, it was new in a sense because it had George's narration as opposed to Ringo's, but
there are only 10 in 3B. Oh wow. Yeah, so it's not a lot of new stuff.
Yeah, only 10 in that. You never realize how small of a pool it is, actually. But
well, yeah, and then I remember the excitement of seeing new episodes. I'm like, oh, thank God,
The engines whistled in delight, and everyone agreed that it was a really happy Thanksgiving.
In terms of the other components in the episode, what do you think of the song? Well, we talked about the music video, but in terms of the jukebox song.
Yes, the jukebox band in this episode sings a song called We Gathered Together. Their whole segment, I think, is really funny. It's, you watch Tito getting stressed about the turkey, quote unquote, only to find out after the song that the turkey has merely been invited for dinner and they're having vegetables, which I think is such a wholesome little moment.
Oh, it's so sweet. That actually probably is one of the most heartwarming moments for me. And the turkey's like, thank goodness.
You guys are a turkey's best friend. Yeah. Vegetarians.
Oh, it was really nice. And I like the song and how they're all around the table. It was great.
Yeah, and again, this is another song that really shows off just the absolute magic of the voices combining.
Yes.
With Phineas Thomas and
I think is it Rory Dodd? I think
yes, Rory Dodd. That's I was blanking for some reason.
No, it's okay. It's an unusual name.
Yeah. So I mean, I really love their singing voices combined, and this is another great example of how well they blend together. And yeah, it's a beautiful song overall.
It is, and it's also nice because it's in a different setting. So we have it in the dressing room.
Yeah, and you know what? That's another thing that I have to give season 3 of Shining Time credit for, because they explore a lot more of the jukebox interior.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of, we see this dressing room. We see, I think in Mysterious Stranger, we're going to see Tito's little nickel vault, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely. It's refreshing. I think, even just watching it now, it's refreshing to see a different location, because we're so used, after season 1 especially, so used to this kind of similar shots of the jukebox.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. And in terms of trivia, what have you got for us today, Mike?
Well, as you may have reckoned, this is in fact the only Thanksgiving episode of Shining Time. I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't try and do another Christmas episode with the new kids.
Oh yeah. Also, could they have done this? Could this have been a Christmas episode instead?
It absolutely could have been.
It could have been,
if they
right?
had kept the original script of Thomas and Percy's Christmas Adventure, they for sure could have made it a Christmas episode.
Yeah, it might have made more sense. I do love Kevin's song.
Yes, of course.
But again, you could have done a Christmassy version of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely could have worked either way. I think they just wanted to, make something that would really appeal specifically to the North American audiences more than anything. So it makes sense that they wanted to do a Thanksgiving episode.
Absolutely.
One other little bit of trivia with that as well is in this episode, you'll notice there is a specific engine being driven in the story about the boomers and the hobos.
Yes.
That is, in fact, the same engine that is driven in Billy's Runaway Train, as well as in the family special, Queen for a Day.
Yes. And that is the train, I believe, from the South Simcoe Railway.
That's right, yes.
Just north of Toronto. Which, interestingly, it's almost Halloween as we're recording this. And I rode the Halloween train there. That's the only time I've been there. And I was dressed as Little Red Riding Hood. My friend was the big bad wolf. And
we love to see it.
We rode the train. I know, right? And they did a whole little Halloween themed thing where they stopped the train and it's like, oh, there's a ghost on the tracks, and you could see people outside with flashlights. For those of you who don't know about it, go check out the South Simcoe Railway. Go with your families, bring the kids. It's a really lovely ride, especially this time of year with the fall colors. And those heritage railways need all the support we can get. So yeah, go check it out.
Yes. Please. Especially, I mean, let's keep in mind the original spirit of the Railway series and Thomas is that, you know, at the end of the day, it's meant to promote railways and especially the heritage railways.
Yes. And it's all about giving. If there's anything we've learned from this episode, isn't it, Mike?
Exactly. Give back. Keep the magic of the railroad alive by giving back to your local heritage line.
This message has been brought to you by... No. Neat.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about this episode before we move on to some ratings?
Well, I have a few little tiny tidbits. This one aired in April, so just to confuse everyone even more, it's not even nearly close to November, American Thanksgiving, and October, Canadian Thanksgiving. It's just like right square in between. But we have learned already that Shining Time Station has a history of not really giving a flying you-know-what about the airing order, as we encountered last time with which episode was it? It was...
was it Do I Hear, which was airing on Christmas Day?
That would be it. Yes.
Yeah.
The very Christmassy Do I Hear. So obviously I don't pretend to know the intricacies of television production and airing schedules, but yes, slightly unusual, which again makes this a bit strange, but still sweet. And one thing that I discovered was speaking of the boomer and the hobo terminology, and I don't think folks use those terms as much now, but I found a boomer and hobo terminology website.
Oh, yes.
And it was on this site called the Hobo Nickel Society, and I was like, sponsored by Schemer. And they had a really interesting sort of breakdown of all of the terms that were used by, boomers, hobos at that time on the railway. And it was interesting to see, because we're going to talk about terminology in the next episode as well. And I'll go through the list here, for example. So we have the term alligator bait, which was fried or stewed liver. Too costly now for hobos. So there's a fellow who maintains this dictionary. What else have we got here that's kind of colorful? Axle grease. Anyone want to take a guess at what that refers to, Mike?
Axle grease. Well, I mean, if I had to guess, based on the context clue from alligator bait being meat, would it be perhaps oil or some sort of fat for cooking said beef in?
Oh my gosh, you're a genius. You looked at the encyclopedia already, didn't you?
I did not. Don't sell me out in front of our audience.
We have a very intelligent man here. It is butter. You nailed it on the head. So sometimes also called plaster, in addition to axle grease. Yes.
I love these terminologies.
It's, you know what? For anyone who wants to look at this, it is on a site called hobonickels.org. We do not endorse the website, but you can look and check it out if you like. And just be aware that a lot of these are slang terms, and some of them may be a bit out of date or derogatory now. But looking at it from a cultural context, you'll find a lot of interesting little tidbits about railroads and the history behind these terms. So as somebody who I did my major in English, I'm a bit of a geek in terms of that stuff. So yeah, check it out. And learn a few new things. I don't know if they would have used different terms. I imagine they would have used different terms if they'd done this episode now. I don't know what they would have been, but yeah, interesting to think about.
Very interesting.
What would you rate this episode, Mike, out of 10, do you think?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and this is a tough one. I think I'm going to settle on an 8.5 out of 10.
Very nice.
My reasons being, to kind of get the negatives out of the way, as you highlighted, I think the plot point of Schemer getting on the train and Billy having to run after and get him, it does feel a bit rushed, and it's also kind of strange that Billy rushes off to rescue him, and the kids go, "What's going to happen to Schemer?"
Yeah.
And Stacy basically goes, "Oh, I'm sure he'll be fine. Let's go. We're going to be late for dinner." And then they just rush out of the station, and there's not really much resolution. Yeah. So
Schemer's gotten lost on trains a couple times now too.
He's got some really bad luck. I feel like maybe at the season finale they should have done an episode where he actually had a successful train trip for once in his life.
That would be nice.
That would have been wholesome, right?
Yes.
Oh man. Yeah, so there's that plot point. Also, of course, I mean, the awkwardness of the editing of the Thomas episode brings it down for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't want those two to be the things that I harp on as much, because really the rest of the episode is so beautiful. I really, really love that it's a bit more focused on Billy. Mm-hmm. I love that he gets his reward in the end. He does all these very selfless acts for people. And I really like how they wrote at the start when J.B. King is asking him to see if he can fix another engine, and he brings up that he wants to get to this party.
Yes.
And the moral is reinforced that, you got to think about other people too, because they're trying to get home. So it shows that Billy's not this 100% perfect character, but with a little bit of prompting, he can turn it around and really show that, he cares about everyone, and he's willing to put others' needs before his own. And that does get rewarded in the end.
Yeah. Which is lovely.
Of course. Yeah. And it's such, as I said earlier, I think the ending scene of everyone slowly coming back into the station, and you just hear the joy in Billy's voice that all his friends and all these people he knows have showed back up just to have Thanksgiving with him so he wouldn't be alone. I really love that ending.
It's really nice. Well, and if I recall correctly, it was a great honor that he was asked by the Boomers and the Hobos, right, to join the dinner, correct?
Yes. Yeah, of course.
So it's nice that like he got that recognition just in the ask, but then could still be with his friends. It didn't necessarily matter by the end, right?
Exactly. What would you rate this, Adrian?
I would give it I would give it a 7.5. For me, it's a solid episode. I like the heart of it, especially at the end. I like you said, seeing a bit more of Billy. I really love Mr. C's little appearance.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Under the thing, and the kids. I enjoy seeing kids being kids. And, again, it's just a reminder. You see them, people have left food on a table, and they're picking up the things and looking inside and, smelling it. And it's that's not very hygienic. And, they're going ew. And you're just reminded, these kids are kids. They're being kids. They're doing their thing. And then Mr. C kind of joins them, and you have a Becky not really understanding what Thanksgiving's about and probably being a bit confused by Schemer, and then by the end she has a sense of what it's about. I do feel like her line is a little forced at the end when she's like, now I know why Thanksgiving's so great. As sweet as it is, I was like, I don't think that was entirely necessary, because I think we really do get that sense of warmth at the end anyway. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's a simple but sweet episode. Not doesn't rank super high for me, but it's also great.
Yeah, it's a great comfort watch, and yeah, I will give props to, again, much like with Schemer and the Jukebox Band, you can tell they started having a lot of fun with George and Mr. C in this season.
Yes.
I feel like they have him in much more outrageous outfits and circumstances, and this episode reveal where he's underneath the food bowl and very innocently he says, I was just seeing what it was like from the turkey's point of view.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he keeps it fresh for me. because they
He
have him doing
does.
different things and different outfits in different places. There's a lot you can do with him because of his size, so they did that really well.
Yeah, I agree. And I really appreciate that, it's ironic that being a comedian, George's delivery in these funny instances isn't always like over the top comedic. It's very genuine.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's why I always liked him, because I believed him.
Yes, absolutely. That's a big selling point on his Mr. C for me, for sure.
The following is a paid advertisement from Ginny of Farmer's Dell. Hey, hey, hey! What do you say? It's Ginny's apples, fresh from Farmer's Dell. Can't you just taste them? Wasn't that good? Well, then, come on over after the show and pick a bushel. Ginny's Orchard is open 24 hours a day. All you need is a flashlight. Hey, 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 Ginny always says, an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Hi, I'm Mike O'Donnell, one of the composers of the original Thomas the Tank Engine theme, and I'm here to tell you that I have released a selection of re-recorded themes and songs from the classic shows in a series of albums called the Engine Themes. These albums include a variety of classic themes and songs from the original TV series, as well as a few new compositions. You can purchase these albums on CD or digital download, as well as posters and pin badges. Have a look online at modmusic.co.uk. And for a special offer for Right On Track listeners, you can use the special code ROT20 for a 20% discount on all digital downloads. Be sure to enter the code when making your purchase. Thank you for your support and happy listening. Take care and stay safe.
Okay, folks, welcome back. We're going to move into our next and final episode of season 3 that we are looking at today. And it is the 19th episode, called Mysterious Stranger. This is the one that I chose. It's a fun one. We start off seeing the circus conductor as the circus train leaves town. And he's sort of hurriedly getting all his stuff together, and you see that he's a little forgetful, which is important in the story. And then they leave, and quickly things begin missing in Shining Time Station. Mr. Conductor can't find his sketch pad. Stacy can't find her cap. And then you start seeing these mysterious shadow on the wall, which I didn't necessarily always see as a kid, and now I look, it's like so funny. Oh, yeah. But spooky music, and basically, the folks at Shining Time Station surmise that there is a thief around the station that must be taking all their things, and so Billy and Stacy decide to stay overnight to catch the thief. And the kids want to stay, but Stacy says, no. This is a grown-up thing. You belong at home. And so the kids go, but they don't really go, as we find out. They hide out and scare Stacy half to death, hiding in the arcade. And then they're all there. And then, of course, we have Schemer up to his usual antics, trying to catch the thief, although trying to scare them as well. Just doing it's crazy stuff. And in the end, Mr. Conductor sheds a little light on the situation, literally turns on the lights, and they find a pile of other missing things. And then Schemer with Felicity, the monkey from the circus, who has been gathering all their things. And it's quite a lovely ending. You see the circus conductor coming back, the ringleader or whatever he's called, and says, I hope she wasn't too much trouble. And Stacy says, we had a fun time monkeying around with her. But I always enjoyed this episode because it was a fun one. It felt well paced because we just get right into the story right away. Right. It's mysterious. We also get to see Shining Time Station at night again, and I always like those episodes. We get to see Stacy being afraid, and the grown-ups deal with a potentially scary situation of somebody they think might be stealing or doing something wrong. It was interesting watching it back, though. I was thinking the kids are like, a thief. They make it sound like such an obscure sort of evil thing. And I'm like, who would this thief be? What kind of thief would, that's, I'm from more of a social work mindset. So I'm always a bit curious about, whereas when I was a kid, I was like, spooky. Yeah. So those are my kind of initial impressions. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. The Shining Time episodes where nighttime is involved they were so few and far between that when you got to see them, it was like, oh, this is kind of mysterious. Like, what could be going on in the station at night? I definitely have distinct memories of this one as a kid.
Really?
Very specifically, I always whenever I think of this episode, I immediately go to Schemer showing off all his methods of how he's going to catch the thief with the net and the soda, the exploding soda.
The soda, my friend.
That's such a good moment. I really cracked up watching that again the other night.
So funny.
I really love how he's just so determined that it's going to work. He goes, "You aim at the criminal and fire."
I know.
Completely blows back.
Oh, I know. And then I love how he's like, "Oh, next time I'll get grape soda," and he goes, "Pah!" Like he just makes these really funny noises, and he's just very theatrical.
Oh, I love Brian. He's so good at really playing up the scene when it calls for it, for sure.
Oh, me too.
And a small note, I just want to give it up to Tom Jackson for the absolute drip in this episode. Billy Two Feathers, dressed to the nines in the engineer clothes, would really, if I could scoop some of those up, I think it'd be a fit.
Well, I will say, I did contact Tom and his agent recently, because as some of you know, I'm doing a display at the end of November, American Thanksgiving, and I wanted to see if he had any things he could contribute, and sadly he did not keep anything from the show.
Oh, no.
I know, that doesn't mean that some of these pieces might not still be floating out there in a costume shop or a thrift store somewhere, but I was like, come on, man, not even like your Billy engineer sweater or like shirt, come on.
Oh,
or your bandana.
Well, you know what? It's time to go DIY. I got to make this happen.
Oh my God. I would love for you to be Billy for Halloween. And he's, correct me if I'm wrong, he's wearing like this, like, is it like a brown sweater and like an orange undershirt and his belt? Is that, or what is it again?
Yeah, he's got like a, I don't even know how you describe it, but I just remember he's got this like really red shirt underneath, and he's got the boots and the pants, and oh my God, it's just, it's a drip. It's a real drip.
I love your love of Billy's clothes, and I think, this needs to happen.
Billy's fashion sends me. Absolutely.
People are like, later in life, people are like, Mike, what inspired you to dress the way you do? You'd be like, well, Billy Two Feathers.
Billy Two Feathers, baby.
Oh my God. On that note, I really enjoy Billy and Stacy's characters in this episode. I like their dynamic, and I particularly like their conversation when Billy stops and he says, Stacy, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to be serious. Are you afraid? Is that what he asks her?
Yeah. He's basically says, I want to ask you something and I want you to be honest. And he just says, are you afraid? And then Stacy goes through, am I afraid of the dark? No. Sitting in the dark? Maybe. Of a thief? Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. And I like their pairing. I like how they, talk to each other, support each other. I like her honesty as an adult, being scared, and then we get to see her really being scared by the kids, because she is such this supportive, motherly figure, and then we get to see her being vulnerable and afraid for her safety and afraid for the other people in the station's safety. So, and also, Stacy's badass. Can I just say, she's like, well, okay, sorry. I shouldn't say badass, because I would not recommend people, like, if they think there's a thief or somebody breaking into their house, to just, like, wait for them at night. Like, Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing that per se. But at the same time, Stacy's badass. She's like, this is my station. I'm going to protect it. And she,
Exactly.
you know, and with Billy at her side, and she's just like there and, you know, confronting people in the darkness. She's brave.
She really is. I mean, that's...
If not a little daredevil-y.
a little bit daredevil. Yeah, you don't want to mess with Stacey Jones.
No, you do not. She is a force to be reckoned with. Take note, folks. Take note.
That's right. That's
right. Yeah, so moving into some of the details, I am a big fan of the Picture Machine song.
Yes.
Everyone's afraid of something, so don't be afraid of your fears. It's very, yeah, I won't sing the whole thing for you, but I could. Write in the comments if you'd like that to happen. But it's catchy and it's odd. It's one of those earworms that I'll like kind of come back to. It'll just be in my mind sometimes. And the take a deep breath and count to 10. I quite enjoy that song, and I really like the cartoon segments that they use, the public domain ones. So we get some of this funny cat, who I think is just afraid of things in general, and is in really funny situations. We get some segments from Gulliver's Travels, particularly at the end, where this person comes across like a giant hand and then counts the fingers on it and then runs away scared. I always thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
And then this fish, that like the smoking fish, that obviously is an old cartoon, small fry. So I like the combination of cartoons, and I just enjoy that that song because it has that like ooh spooky, but also funny, and you can face your fears. And also, to be honest, like the take a deep breath and count to 10, like teaching kids coping strategies, I'm like, good job, Shining Time. Like that's pretty solid for the 90s.
It's great advice.
I mean, it's stuff like, we do 5-finger breathing and all this stuff now, box breathing and stuff, but that's great. I have to hand it to them. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's not my favorite Picture Machine song, but it definitely is catchy. It sticks with you.
Yeah.
You remember it.
Yeah.
And I agree. The use of the cartoons, sometimes the cartoons in the Picture Machine can feel a bit random, and it doesn't always feel like it totally matches up with the song.
Random.
But I feel like basically everything here works really well with the motif of the song. And as you mentioned, I think, when I think of this song, I always go immediately to the end of the where they're showing the scene from Gulliver's Travels where he's counting to 10 on the giant's hand, and that that sticks in my mind so much from when I was a kid.
It's a very striking visual.
So why shouldn't you? Everyone's afraid of something, so don't be afraid of your fear. Take a deep breath and count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and soon it'll disappear.
So the kids listen. They dare each other to watch this Picture Machine story when they're all in the station at night. And of course, when Stacy's off calling the parents. And it's interesting, we never do see the kids' parents, but I often wonder how they feel about their kids being at a train station so much. Stacy's almost like the surrogate mother to them all, and I wonder if the parents are like, you can't spend all the time down there. What are you thinking?
Do these kids ever go to school?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a good question. Even it being a fantasy situation, I wonder sometimes. On the note of the Thomas stories, I like at this point in season 3, like, these episodes, it's Henry in the tunnel, and then Henry getting out of the tunnel.
Correct.
It seems tired to me at this point. I'm just like, I'm fast forwarding. Like I love series 1 of Thomas. Don't get me wrong, but at this point, how many times these particular stories have been repeated, I just start to get bored.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, and it's definitely a case of, as you get later in season 3, they're definitely kind of, I don't want to say scraping the bottom of the barrel, because it's not like they're bad stories, but it's just that you've seen them all before at this point. And
they're pigeonholing some of them in, I feel.
Yeah, they really are. And I don't know why this sticks out to me so much, but after, for those of us in North America who use the North American titles, after the end of Come Out Henry, when the kids ask if Henry gets out of the tunnel, Mr. C says, Henry just needs some quiet time. And I just always kind of roll my eyes at that. I'm like, oh, way to make it like super kidsy with that line.
I know. It's a little much.
Henry got out of the tunnel and he wasn't afraid anymore.
That's because he learned there was nothing to be afraid of. And because he had some help from his friends.
Yeah. I mean, the stories are, again, the Thomas stories they use right up to the end are still great stories, but it's just, I don't know. You really start to tell that, like, if they had some new stories to work with, as you mentioned in the previous review, if they had timed it more for when maybe season 4 was starting to air and they could have integrated some of those stories, I think it would have helped it to feel a bit more fresh overall, as opposed to just retreading old ground.
Absolutely. And because we get, 2 different narrated versions of like most of the repeated episodes. So I know that the producers were well aware of that problem, and there wasn't much they could do about it, given, I think, the cost too of shooting Thomas, and that they could only, do so much at a time. I know series 3 was partially funded by, was it Fuji? Japan?
Yes, Fuji Television.
Yeah. So I know Britt was making a lot of the money for filming Shining Time off of her, self-funded ventures, the Thomas merchandise, et cetera, but I know she had to look for funding elsewhere, and again, it was very expensive to shoot, so they didn't get around to, series 4 in 95. And it's just a shame that didn't line up, but I think they also had to strike while the iron is hot with Shining Time, and it was really popular. I mean, this is season 3. We'll be interchangeably using series and season.
That's right.
It really was at the height of its popularity. People were, definitely, lining up to, do these meet and greets with the cast. It was hitting its, I think, highest viewership of about 7.5 million viewers a week, which is a lot for a show.
It's huge.
It was really popular at the time, so they're also contending with that. So I assume they wanted to keep shooting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the Thomas stories. I mean, don't get me wrong, love series 1 of Thomas, and they're classic stories. I mean, in and of themselves, I do, well, as a kid even, I sometimes got bored, but they are very classic, and I enjoy them in their own right, but not in the context of this episode.
Yeah, it's odd because, like, I feel like I can watch these series 1 and series 2 Thomas episodes, like if I watch it on like a standalone VHS.
Yeah.
It's no problem, but
absolutely,
when I watch it, for some reason, when I watch it in the context of Shining Time, I'm like, oh, this again? Really?
Yeah, because it's sort of like, when somebody tells you a story, you're hoping that it's relatively fresh. Otherwise, it's like, your grandpa being like, I remember this time. And you're like, oh, grandpa, I've heard this story like 80,000 times, like not again. It's sort of like, sort of Mr. C. It's like, oh, Mr. C, like, because they'll be like, he's like, have you heard this before? They'll be like, I don't remember that one. I'm like, I do.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's the thing when he's like, you remember Henry, the big green engine? And they all go, no. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Have you not been listening to anything I've been saying for the last 2 years? You kids are supposed to be learning things in school. You're not retaining. And it is quite funny when you think about it. Especially because, they'll say things like big green engine. I know partly that was Dr. Ron Slaby helping kids remember the engines and, really giving them different personalities. But again, kids are smart. You don't need to do that every time. It's like when in the hit era, when they start like, Gordon is a big blue express engine and he goes fast. And it's like, we know. If we're watching this, believe me, for as many seasons as we have, we know the characters, even though, we are adults. But even as a kid, I know I got tired of that.
Oh yeah, even as a kid, I was like, please just jump into the story, I beg you.
And if anyone who is like not in the fandom or outside of the Shining Time Thomas world is listening, please take note. Don't dumb things down for kids. The minute you do that, the minute you're just telling them that they're not, that they're not intelligent enough to understand what you're trying to convey. The amount that they can process and integrate, and that's not to say like you should be oversharing adult matter with kids, but I mean in terms of them understanding concepts and like intuiting feelings, they really can. So just enough with with some of the repetition, because it just comes across as patronizing. That's my rant.
Yes,
that is that is my therapist rant.
And to paraphrase Wilbert Audrey, the author of the original Thomas stories, you're not only writing for kids, you're also writing for the adults who either have to read through it time and again or have to sit through the stories on TV with the kids. So
yes,
you have to, I think that, and I mean, not that I'm an expert by any means, but when you're writing, I feel like if you approach it specifically as you're writing for kids, I think that can lead you down a path that maybe doesn't get you to the best outcome in terms of a story. I think if you just act as if you're writing for yourself, write it as something that you would enjoy, obviously keeping in mind, certain things probably shouldn't be in it if it's for a younger audience.
Yeah.
But as long as you're enjoying it and it's entertaining you, kids are probably going to be entertained by it too. They don't need specific child stories. They just need good stories.
I couldn't have said it better. It makes me think of that quote from Mrs. Doubtfire when Daniel is talking to his potentially new boss, saying, don't, the kind of motto here is don't play dad to kids. If it's something that you'd enjoy, they'd enjoy.
Exactly.
Yeah, we really, I think, undersell kids, and they deserve a lot of our respect. And just on a side note, Mike is an incredible writer. So,
shucks.
And no, it really, for those who aren't aware, he's, written an incredible collection of stories. And I was at first, when I started chatting with him, a bit starstruck because I was like, oh my gosh, it's Mike. But I'm hoping, and I love hearing your perspective on writing. And I hope we can maybe weave some of that in, continue to weave that into our episodes here. For our listeners, like tips, suggestions, just things that you notice about the writing in the show. We have a lot of different writers coming in.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's cool to hear.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to offer the perspective and in any way I can.
No, please do. And just to comment on, just before we move into kind of our trivia and ratings, the song the Jukebox Puppet Band sings, which is Waltzing Matilda. It's a very interesting Australian folk song. And as a kid, I remember being sort of entranced by the lyrics and knew there was something spooky because you have this ghost coming through at the end. But I did a little research on this, what is known as a bush ballad in Australia. So... I feel like, sorry, for those who watch Right on Track, I feel like I'm having a Connor Jonas moment where he has this little, well, I looked this up. So the title...
This is a certified Connor Jonas moment.
Absolutely. Yes, brought to you by Time to Shine. So the title, Waltzing Matilda, was Australian slang for traveling on foot, i.e. waltzing with one's belongings in a matilda or a swag slung over one's back. And this particular song tells the story of an itinerant worker or a swag man making a drink of billy tea at a bush camp and capturing a stray jumbuck, which is also known as a sheep, to eat. And when the jumbuck sheep's owner, a squatter, and 3 troopers, who are mounted policemen, pursue the swag man for the theft of the sheep, he declares, "You'll never catch me alive," and commits suicide by drowning himself in a nearby billabong, which is a watering hole. After which his ghost haunts the site. So, it's very dark, but I hand it to the folks who were, the Shining Time team, and Steve Horlick, who did a lot of the music, and whoever chose the songs, because I love folk songs, and I loved the folk music element of Shining Time.
Yes,
and here we're
I agree.
hearing about, an Australian kind of folk tale, and there's loaded with all this slang, so you don't really get it, but you know what happened. He's running away, and you know that he dies in the Billabong. So yeah, I just found that interesting, and I like their rendition of this song. It's pretty, and because Tito says like, oh, let's no use being afraid. Let's play something and maybe we'll feel better. And it's ironic because they play like kind of a scary song.
They do.
And there's a ghost at the end, so I'm like, you could have done like a lullaby, but I quite enjoy that song.
Who'll come a waltzing Matilda, my darling? Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Waltzing Matilda and lead in a water bag. Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Down came the squatter riding his thoroughbred. Down came the policeman, 1, 2, 3. Whose is the jumbuck you've got in your tucker bag? You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. But the swag man, he got up and jumped into the water hole, drowning himself by the coolabah tree, and his ghost may be heard as it sings in the billabong. Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Who'll come a waltzing Matilda, my darling? Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Waltzing Matilda and lead in a water bag. Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me?
Any thoughts on it for you?
I did not know any of that background knowledge that you just laid on me,
Yes.
but in spite of that, I always really enjoyed this rendition of the song. Even not knowing what any of the lyrics actually meant, I just think that the rendition is beautiful. Rory Dodd singing is fantastic.
Yes.
This one again, this is another jukebox performance that really sticks out in my mind, and just it's so well done, and it does fit the theme of the episode very well. You do have the involvement of something spooky in there, so yeah, I think it's a great choice to have in the episode, and a great rendition for sure.
And it's interesting because, just to touch back on our theme, when I was saying like, oh, we can just sort of talk about thieves as these people that steal, but like, are they impoverished? What kind of circumstances do they come from? What is forcing them to steal? And here we have a story of somebody who it sounds like is, he's basically a migrant worker, doesn't have a lot of money, stealing a sheep for food, and then committing suicide as he's being chased by the cops. So it's an interesting story because, it's when you really look at what it is, it's like, oh, that's not really spooky. It's just a little sad, maybe. And sorry, I'm getting too like political, but actually, sorry, I'm not going to apologize for that. I think it's important to think of these little social elements, I guess I should say.
I agree.
And just to touch on a little bit of trivia, this is the first episode where the jukebox band acknowledged Mr. Conductor when they talk about him missing his pad, because Tito is oh so concerned about his nickel collection.
Yes.
And he's talking to Slots, who is a pig, as it turns out. I thought he was a cow as a kid, but when I was doing the podcast, they're like, the pig. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because he's very large and just says, rat.
Yeah.
Rat. I don't really know. He just, I guess, just hangs out in Tito's vault and guards the nickels. I don't know.
I didn't know that he actually had a name.
Yeah, that's according to Craig and Olga, Slots. And I bet they still have Slots because they've kept a lot of their props. They probably have him around somewhere. I love when he's talking to the nickels, side note, Tito, and he's like, I'll come back later, my little darlings. Will you be okay? And then she's like, Tito! I'm pretty sure this is the right episode, right? Where he does that?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, so I enjoy his obsession. mirrors schemers quite nicely. Another little tidbit. There are a couple tidbits that came up in the podcast. One being that Mike and I were chatting about earlier, that the monkey hand turning off the lights and knocking over the phone at the front desk is, in fact, Danielle Marco's younger sister's hand dressed up like a monkey, because it was small enough to do that task on camera. So that is a little cameo from her. I don't know if she was in the credits, but good job, Danielle's younger sister and her hand. And we also hear from Rick Sigelco that this was likely the episode where the monkey got loose and climbed up into the lighting grid and was throwing monkey-like things at the crew, and it had to be coaxed down with some kind of food. Rick seemed to remember it was maybe a banana or something. But I thought that was quite comical, because it's just, you never know what's going to happen on a set. But that was one of Rick's recollections, and I'm sure was probably stressful at the time. Like, funny to look back on, but when you're dealing with, everything needs to be done yesterday, and studio time, and the costs and all that. So that's my trivia.
There's just something about this place, isn't there?
There absolutely is. I also said to him, it's quite poetic that that it's a monk, like there's somebody in the station causing trouble, and the fact that the actual monkey got loose and was causing trouble on set was kind of poetic.
I agree.
Yeah. Any trivia on your end?
I don't think there's any trivia on my end. I think this is, if I'm getting my my counts right here, I believe this is the third time that a circus or a circus train has come to Shining Time Station, because we had it in Is This the End with Jerry the Juggler. We, of course, had it at, again, the season finale of season 2, All's Fair, when the circus performers come through for the county fair. And again, now we've got a circus train in season 3.
I mean, circuses are fun, and I think there's something about them coming through Shining Time, because I guess just the spectacle of it. We've had jugglers and clowns and stuff come on before, but I think it adds an element of excitement and something that kids can get thrilled about. And interestingly, one of the original premises, I think, for now, was it the Shining Time film? I can't remember, but
yes, it was.
Was Schemer getting on like a circus train or something, get captured by these guys, and he gets shot out of a cannon or something? Do you remember that?
Yeah. I believe, if I remember the brief details correctly, that Schemer was getting fired out of a cannon at one point, and then I don't know how they were going to make this work, but apparently the evil ringleader captures Mr. Conductor.
That's it.
And the kids and the engines from the island of Sodor have to band together to save him. I don't know how they would have made that work, but then again, Thomas and the Magic Railroad exists, so what do I know?
I agree. Again, you're getting. I think what Shining Time does well is it does navigate the world of Shining Time Station and Thomas kind of well, and I think it's as much as that crossover can go. They did push it a little bit on the family specials where we see more stuff outside, but they don't cross it with the engines, and I appreciate that, actually. I think that works well. So when you change that, I think it starts to get a bit goofy and confusing, especially when you think about things like size and whatnot. But
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think it's like, overall for me, it's a fun ep, and it gives me kind of similar Schemer Goes Camping vibes a little bit. I almost chose that episode because it's another sort of nighttime one and it has fun little stories and whatnot. But I opted for this one just because I think it was just pretty sharp overall. Yeah,
I agree completely. What would you give this episode in terms of an actual rating?
So I would give it a solid 8. I enjoyed it when it came on as a kid. I like watching it again now. Like when I got to rewatch it for this, it was just fun. It's a fun episode to watch. That's how I feel about it. It's like I said, it's well paced. You get some good songs. You might skip through the Henry stories, but overall, a nice little package. And I think for me, it's one of the better episodes of season 3, kind of when it gets it right and when the writing is good and when it's well pulled together. What about you, Mike?
I think I'm going to have to agree with you. I think I'll give it an 8 as well. It is a fun episode. Everything in the station itself is very well done this episode. Schemer, of course, his antics will always drive up the score in my books. Yes. We have a beautiful jukebox song, a wonderful Picture Machine song, which I've said before. I've always felt that the Picture Machine and the Anything Tunnel can be sort of hit or miss.
Yeah.
But this is an instance where it really is a hit. So it fits in well with the theme of the episode. I give them props for that. Everything just seems to be right on the mark with this episode, I feel. The score is dragged down a bit, of course, by, we get those repeat Thomas stories, which, again, they're not bad stories, but
no, they're great.
It would have been bolstered a bit more if we had some quote unquote fresh blood in the Thomas story department. So, I think that's really what kind of weighs it down for me. But other than that, I love the nighttime atmosphere and the vulnerable moments with Billy and Stacy. Those are kind of rare things that we don't see as much throughout the series.
Yeah, and getting to see people get scared, it's always kind of fun,
Yeah.
I was wondering, in terms of Thomas stories, like if you had to pick some from series 4 of Thomas, what do you think would fit?
Well, I think my go-to, and kind of keeping in theme with the original Henry stories that they chose, I think Henry and the Elephant would be a really good choice. Because it ties in not only the element of, being afraid of the unknown, but it's also got a circus in it, which ties in really well to the Shining Time episode.
God, it would go so perfectly. So it's one of these things I wish I could go back in time, because it would have just fit like a glove. Good thinking. I was thinking more of the narrow gauge. I forgot about the standard gauge depths.
Yeah, I mean, with the narrow gauge too, I think that's a good question. I don't know what narrow
Don't even
gauge
think about it, because that one that you
choose.
chose was so perfect. I don't think you can top that. It has the circus. It has Henry being afraid of the tunnel, of something big and scary in the tunnel.
And you know what? I will say, I've mentioned this on our Right on Tracks episode, but as a kid, I actually remember being more frightened of Henry and the Elephant than something like Ghost Train or Thomas Percy and the Dragon.
Fascinating.
The moment in the tunnel where you see the horrified workmen and then the elephant raises its trunk at them in the darkness. I was always so freaked out by that as a kid. I don't know why. I watch it now and I'm like, I was scared of this? What? Why was this a
very
thing?
Sweet. It's sweet though. No, and I think it points psychologically to that, the better part of us, the biggest fear is the unknown.
Exactly.
And that, I think, is kind of the theme here. And also, we get a reminder, don't lose yourself. Fear and anxiety can be helpful, and it can also be overwhelming when our imaginations get ahead of us. I mean, they're thinking it's this thief and all this, and it's a monkey. So there's a way that you can get carried away, I think. And, I don't know. It's funny because even in the Henry story, you're talking about the workmen go inside and then they all run out. So we see adults and kids being afraid, not being normalized. But we also, I think another kind of moral for this episode is just, dot your I's and cross your T's, because we have the ringleader is a little forgetful, which I can relate to. And if he had checked his list properly, Felicity would have been on the train. Not to say that it's not okay to make mistakes, but maybe don't rush. Take your time. Make sure the job is done, right, so that maybe you prevent. You save some other people some hassle,
some grief for sure.
Hi, I'm Ken Bianco Jr. from Train World, where we have the greatest selection of model trains and train sets. We also are proud to carry Bachman's full line of Thomas & Friends products. With a large variety of different brands and scales, we have the best items for your model train collection. You can find Train World on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, where you can see our latest products and even be invited to all our events like Thomas Tuesdays. Visit trainworld.com today to find your next addition to your model railroad journey.
And we both chose 8s, right? So this is a solid duck, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think this is the first instance where we have both given the same rating to an episode.
The first time we unanimously agreed.
New ground has been broken.
Yeah, I was going to say our relationship is progressing. This will not be the only time we will completely agree, but yes, and we are having a lot of fun doing this, and we hope that you're all enjoying kind of these taster general episodes. And I know these episodes are a little bit longer because we're kind of doing a season overview, but I hope you can get a sense for what our episodes will be like, where we review 2 at a time chronologically, and we're going to do a few more for you before we loop all the way back to our heartfelt and beautiful season 1 of the show. And stay tuned for next time, because we will be doing a family special.
Yes, indeed.
And we are excited because, I don't know, in many ways they to me felt like the little movies that we never got, because I didn't watch a lot of them growing up. I only saw one and briefly. So it's a treat to go back and see the actors and the set a couple years later, a little bit different. So it's great that was able to happen, and that we're able to review those for you. And thanks to the uploads that Joseph did, and
yes, of course,
we're able to watch those in the best quality they've ever been. And notoriously, they've been like broken up into parts and really, really fuzzy. So we have nice new scans of those. So if you haven't checked them out, go and watch the first one. And let us know what you think so far. Again, your comments are always welcome. What are your favorite episodes of season 3 of the show? What are you looking forward to us reviewing? Would you like us to have more guests? Because we are thinking it would be really nice to have some more folks on who worked on the show, potentially.
Certainly.
So keep that feedback coming and keep tuning in.
Yes, please. We enjoy your extended viewership or listenership, if you will. We enjoy the feedback as well, so please let us know. What are you liking? What would you say are your favorite episodes? And going off what we've discussed today, what replacement Thomas episodes would you choose for these episodes of Shining Time Station? We're very curious to know.
Yes, that's a really good point. And one thing I think we'll maybe also start weaving in is talking a bit more about the morals. I know we've done that a bit, but how they fit, with the Thomas stories and what we feel like the morals of the Shining Time episodes are, because they're often more subtle, or not more subtle, but compared to other shows, a bit more subtle.
Yes.
Just stay tuned, because we've got some really exciting things coming.
Mike.
And thank you so much for joining us.
See you soon, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.